Thank you, Wes. I'm the guy that gets to follow Mark. Had I known. Well, good evening. Like Wes said, thank you, Wes, for that introduction. For the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to challenge you on the role of the church in the fight against global poverty. And what I'm going to share is going to potentially hit hard. Some of you might be frustrated. Some of you may even be offended by some of the things that I'm going to say. But that's a risk I've decided I'm willing to take because, I've been frustrated by this too. We live in this moment in time where disagreement is seen as division, where being challenged is interpreted as being attacked. And in a culture like that, we all know this, it's really difficult to have hard conversations, especially about things that matter. But that's what I'm going to do. Maybe a little uncomfortable for some of you, but I think it's super important. Now look, I'm not here to win an argument, but I am here to open a conversation that challenges the U.S. church to rethink how we engage the global poor. How we engage the global poor. Because, the things that we're currently doing, we think they're helpful, but they're actually not. And in many cases, they're doing more harm than good. So the church has never done more in the fight against global poverty. More trips, more giving, more partnerships, and yet poverty's winning. And that should be really unsettling for all of us in this room. Not just because it's heartbreaking, and it is, but because it's telling us something. It's telling us that what we're doing is not working. And in many cases, some would say most cases, we're actually making it worse. 20 years ago, I started the 410 Bridge. The 410 Bridge is a Christ-centered, community-led, holistic development ministry. We operate in about 100 communities and villages in 6 countries around the world. We essentially walk with the community for an extended period of time, a decade plus, on their journey of development. We exist to address the poverty problem. And over the past couple decades, I've seen the same pattern occur. It just repeats. Well-intentioned, well-meaning, faith-driven initiatives that fail. They don't just fall short, they fail. Good intentions that do more to create dependence than they do restore people's dignity. Mission trips that have devolved into and now perpetuate as poverty tourism. The church is active. We're doing stuff. We're simply just getting it wrong. So I wish I knew 20 years ago what I've come to learn about what I call the 3 C's: complacency, comfort, and conceit. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Let me start with complacency. We all know the feeling, right? We see a need, we want to help, we do something, we give, we go, we serve, and then we settle. We've done what we can. We've checked the box. That's complacency. Complacency is not laziness. It's not apathy. It's more deceptive than that. It says that we've done all we can, and it gives us an excuse and a false sense of completion. False because we assume that because we've done something, we've accomplished something. But here's the danger. What if we haven't helped at all? What if we're simply repeating the same patterns year over year, decade over decade, and convinced ourselves that what we're doing is working? Because somewhere along the way, the church began confusing activity with outcomes. We became complacent by seeing the poor as a set of problems that we want to fix, not the solution to their poverty problem. And then there's comfort. We like helping, as long as it doesn't cost us too much. We care, as long as it's not too disruptive. That's comfort. Comfort tells us that we can engage on our terms. We can remain in control. We can help, but not too much. We can give, but not sacrifice. And we can care, but from a safe distance. But if we really want to help, it's going to cost us something. It's going to stretch us. It's going to be uncomfortable because we've got to get close. We've got to see it and feel it and smell it. Because comfort lies to us by telling us that we can help the poor without actually knowing the poor. And that's not compassion. That's distance. And that's not what Jesus did. Jesus came close. He entered the mess. He actually ran to the mess. And then there's conceit. It's a strong word. It's an ugly word, but it belongs here. Some of you are more uncomfortable now than you were a few minutes ago. But let me explain, conceit is not arrogance. Arrogance is loud. It's easy to spot. It's behavior. Arrogance is the outsider that walks into a poor community and takes control and is dictating solutions and dismissing local wisdom. We all know not to do that, or at least how to hide it. No, conceit blinds us to our own poverty, and that distorts our view of theirs. Our poverty is what I call a poverty of abundance. And in our abundance, we've come to define poverty as a material problem. More stuff, more things, more money, more projects. But poverty is not a material problem. It's an issue of worldview. Worldview is simply people's perspectives, the story they're telling themselves to be true. Worldview is the lens in which people see the world and the way it works or the way it should work. And conceit tells us that it's their worldview that needs to change. And yeah, it does. But so does ours. Good grief. Because as long as the church continues to view and see poverty through the lens of materiality, we will continue to offer material solutions and then wonder why nothing changes. Because more stuff, more things, more money, more projects is not going to solve their poverty problem. And it's not going to solve ours either. Because poverty is not a material problem. It's rooted in how people see themselves, see each other, and how they see God. So the question isn't, can the church change? Church has to change. So the question is, will the church change? Will we do the messy, uncomfortable, difficult work of changing the paradigm of how the church engages the global poor? Not as fixers of material problems, but as a church that sees the poor not as a set of problems to be solved, but we see them as image bearers of their Creator and the solution to their poverty problem. That's the question, and the answer to that question is actually yes. The church will change. We're seeing it all the time. The good news is it's actually an emphatic yes. Because the good news is that you don't have to walk this path alone. There is a growing cohort of global missions leaders from the U.S. church that gather and are standing against the current of these old patterns. They're seeing people, they're prioritizing people over programs. And importantly, they're understanding that we need to do with the poor, not for the poor. And these leaders also understand that the best way to get better at global missions is to get better together. So that's the path we're walking at the 410 Bridge as we redefine the war on poverty. We're redefining what it means to win it, We're redefining what it means for the people actually living in extreme poverty. And I think importantly, we're redefining how we fight that battle together. It's why we exist. And it's also why we created and established the Global Outreach Network. This is a network of global missions leaders from the U.S. church who are sitting at a table and committed to disrupting these old paradigms, breaking the old patterns. So if something I've said tonight stirs something in you, and I don't mean that you're sitting there frustrated and potentially offended. No, I mean if it's stirring a holy discontent in you, you should know that you're not alone. And there's a seat at the table for you. Because, well, come find me. I'm doing two workshops this week, measuring success in global missions and finding and effectively vetting global partners. So come find me or send me a note. Let's have a conversation. Because if your church really wants to help, it starts by changing how you see the people you serve and how we see ourselves. Thanks for your time.